When clients come to us asking what exactly they should purchase, I always tell them about two investment strategies. The first strategy is buying with the intention of reselling later. And often, the most profitable option in this case is purchasing properties from developers. Why is that? Because at every stage of a property's completion, its price increases. Probably the law of the market is that there are three main stages. The first price increase happens when the property first emerges from the ground. Next, there's another increase at around 30 to 40% completion. And the third increase comes at about 70 to 80% completion. After that, only when the keys are handed over does the property reach its maximum price, at which point it is traded directly on the market. So what are the main advantages of buying directly from the developer? You don't have to pay the full price of the property up front since all developers offer interest-free installment plans. Initially, you pay an entry amount of 10 to 20% of the property's value. And then, according to the payment plan, you make equal payments up until the handover, with the remaining balance due upon receiving the keys. There are also developers who offer installment plans even after you receive the keys. There aren't that many properties like this, but we can find such options as well. The appeal of this strategy is that you can sell the property after paying just 40% of its value. For example, if you purchase a property for $1 million and later pay 40%, that is only $400,000. If the property increases in value by, say, 15% by the time it reaches its first stage of completion, such as 30% readiness, then by having paid only 40%, you lock in a net profit of 40% on your invested funds. In other words, the property itself increased by 15%, but you earned a greater profit because you only paid a partial amount of the property's value up front. When purchasing properties directly from developers, what should you pay attention to? All developers are different. For example, if you buy properties from government developers, the price is often already quite high due to their reputation, location, brand, and so on. But this is a stable growth potential that they demonstrate. So, when you purchase a property from a government developer, you always know that it's not some kind of lottery or just picking a property with great potential. It's their name that drives the future price growth as well as the current price of the property. But we also don't overlook private developers. Often, private developers who have completed, for example, 1, 2, or 3 projects in Dubai, or perhaps haven't completed anything at all yet, offer prices that are significantly lower than those of government developers. That is, the price per square meter can be 15, 20, or even 30% lower. And these properties can be, for example, right next to buildings from major government developers like Emaar, Nakheel, Dubai Properties, and so on. And these properties may even have greater potential. But there are risks that the developer might delay the project or deliver it in a way that doesn't match the renderings. And this is exactly where our expertise comes into play. We thoroughly analyze the developer's background and inform the client about any pitfalls and risks associated with a particular developer. But there are many common cases where after purchasing property from private real estate developers, it significantly appreciates in value and subsequently brings the astute investor much higher financial returns than similar properties acquired from government-backed developers. That's why there's a very fine line here that you can't afford to cross, because private developers can also have situations where, for example, the renderings look beautiful, but in the end, the finished property isn't of great quality and reselling it can be much more difficult. As for the strategy when clients are buying, for example, completed properties, these are often not from developers, but rather properties on the secondary real estate market. They are attractive even in cases where, for example, someone bought a property from a developer, say it's under construction or nearing completion, and our investment strategy is not about flipping, that is, reselling, but rather about renting out the property. What makes this appealing, and again, what are the potential pitfalls here? The choice of location is extremely important. Very often, brokers may offer clients properties for short-term rental in locations that are completely unsuitable for this purpose. In other words, no one will rent a property for a week or two if it's in a location that's not attractive to tourists. For example, it might be located in a remote area, but at the same time, this location could be very attractive for expats or people who live here because they might prefer to commute 15 or 20 minutes to work rather than overpay for rent. And here, once again, it's very important to understand the strategy and to know what our client, our investor, is looking for. So, if the client is interested in renting out apartments short term, my personal recommendation is to choose properties on the first coastline, in the city center, or near attractions that directly appeal to tourists who are the potential short-term tenants. If, on the other hand, the investor is more interested in passive investment strategies, where the property is rented out for a year, the investor receives payment from the tenant for the entire year in advance, and doesn't have to worry about occupancy rates, frequent tenant turnover, and so on, then these could be completely different locations. Often, tourist locations are absolutely unsuitable for investors who choose a long-term rental strategy. And here, we really try to take a more detailed approach when selecting real estate by gaining a deeper understanding of what our investor, our client, is looking for.